Today, not yet. We're ready. We're going to learn new Maimer today, and we have already a few significant days coming up. We have Yud Gimel Iyar coming, and we have Pesach Sheni, and we have Lag BaOmer, all coming up in the next couple of days. But we don't have enough time to get through one specific Maimer on any of those topics. Last year we learned a Maimer for Lag BaOmer, so we'll have to try and just remember that one. And now we're going to turn our attention to Shavuot. It's going to take us on a bit of a journey to discuss what the novelty of Matan Torah. Shavuos, we celebrate the giving of the Torah, and the question that we're going to approach right at the beginning, one of the questions we'll have to address is what was significant about Matan Torah? What changed at Mount Sinai? What was the Chiddush? What came about as a result of Mount Sinai, about Hashem giving us the Torah? So the Rebbe here in this Maimer is going to discuss the impact that it had on all parties involved. All parties involved are God, the giver of the Torah, the Jewish people, the receivers of the Torah, and the Torah itself that was given. So that's where we're gonna go with the Maimer. But so it gives us an understanding in the significance of Yom Beis Chag HaShavuos, Tavshin Chavtes in 1969. Okay, Vayedaber Elokim is called Vayedaber Leimer. The Aseres HaDibros, the Ten Commandments in the Torah, are introduced with a pasuk. Vayedaber Elokim is called Vayedaber Leimer. That God spoke all these things, saying. And then the next pasuk is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the first of the Ten Commandments. So that's the opening verse of the Aseres HaDibros. Is this verse? Vayedaber Elokim is called Vayedaber Leimer. So if you do adiuk, so we know the question asked on this verse, but Mashakasav Leimer. Why it says Leimer? The word Leimer is very common in the Torah. Vayedaber Hashem Moshe Leimer. Hashem speaks to Moshe Leimer, which we translate always as saying. But what does it mean, saying? Why does the word Leimer appear? Because the system basically was that Hashem would speak to Moshe, and the idea was that Moshe would then repeat it. So Moshe would repeat it to Aaron, and then repeat it to Aaron's sons, and then to the Skanim, then to the Jewish people. There was a whole process. So Hashem speaks either to Moshe alone or to Moshe and Aaron alone, whatever the case may be. And then the idea is Leimer, that they then repeat it to the people. Meaning of the word Leimer. Why? Because the Me'achar Shekol Yisrael Hanasham Shebachal Dar Yisrael B'Maimed Har Sinai, since all Jews, and you could say Leimer. What generally we're saying Leimer to repeat it to those who weren't there, but we know that at Mount Sinai everybody was there. Hashem spoke to all the people. So you could say maybe it doesn't mean to all the people that were there, but to all the future generations. Repeat it, to teach it to the future generations. That's also not because Hanasham Shebachal Dar, all the souls of all the future generations were all present at Mount Sinai. And they all heard these commandments. Aseres HaDibros from Hashem himself said, Ma'o Pirush Le, to repeat it to others. Everybody heard it, who is there to repeat it to? Can't be understood in its conventional sense, which is to repeat it to those who weren't present to hear what was being said. So even their neshamas were there. Yeah, all the as a neshama, that neshama, all the neshamas were there. So so the point of the explanation it's brought in Chassidus is this word Leimer. Within this word, we have what was the Chiddush of Matan Torah, the novelty, what was introduced by Mount Sinai. All of that is encapsulated in the word Leimer. How so? Because and so to the other patriarchs, all observed the rabbinic Judaism. So since we're saying that Avraham Avinu observed the Torah, well, in order to observe it, remember we talked about Gadol Talmud Shemei V'lei Maisa. In order to observe it, you need to learn. You need to study Torah in order to know what to do. So Avraham Avinu was the first one to fulfill the Torah. He had to learn it. But then what did he do? It's not likely that he just transmitted the behaviors, the actions, the activities to his children, to Yitzchak and Yaakov, to do what I do. He probably also taught them Torah. Right? The instruction for what to do. And what is the Chiddush? So was experienced at Mount Sinai? What was the big revelation at Sinai if already before the Yidden were studying Torah and observing Torah? Or some Yidden were doing it. If you look in notes, taught Yitzchak Torah. It wasn't just that he taught him what to do, but in other words, Avraham Avinu observed the mitzvahs. If he was observing the mitzvahs, but also you had to have been teaching him Torah. And the Rebbe brings in note 7, the Gemara says that from the days of our ancestors, Yeshivas by Yidden. Avraham Avinu Zaken Yeshiv Yeshiva Haya. The Gemara says that Avraham Avinu you learn Torah. Mizitz the learn Torah. You're sitting and learn Torah. Yeah. Okay. So then, what's the chiddush of Matan Torah? So we have to understand what's lamer, and we're going to get to lamer. How lamer tells us what happens at Mount Sinai, what the achievement of Sinai was. This is couched in the question of what is it that was the new experience there. So Mavayir Akasuv. So to address this, what was new about Matan Torah? What happened at Mount Sinai? So Matan Torah, so this is what the verse is telling us. All these things that you already were studying, we already had Torah, you're already studying Torah. You want to know what happens at Mount Sinai? Lamar. That every single year that Mount Sinai is given the ability to have Lamar. What does that mean? What does that mean? That Yid's Torah that he was studying before Mount Torah, he couldn't study Torah in a manner of Lamar. But at Mount Sinai, what happens? Lamar, everybody could study Torah. Everybody's given the ability to study Torah in a manner of Lamar. So Shnei Pirushim says. So two explanations in what this means. What does it mean that a Yid studies Torah in a manner of Lamar? That through a Yid studying Torah, through his studying the words of Torah, articulating the words of Torah, that causes that Hashem should also say these words of Torah. As the Medrash says that that whoever sits and reads and learns, so the Eibishter reads and learns with the opposite him as well. So now, the meaning then of the word lamer, which as we know, lamer generally means to la Kadosh Baruch Hu kivayachol sheyachzor al diburim shaloi. So lamer is that a Yid studies Torah, and he's saying these things, so to speak, to the Eibishter, that the Eibishter should repeat it. So here too, the word lamer means that you repeat. Just as generally, whenever it says in the Torah, lamer, what does lamer mean? That you repeat Torah, he does it in a manner of lamer. That he studies Torah, he's just repeating it back to him. The second interpretation here is of lamer is shalimur that Torah shal adam yeh ba'ofen de lamer. That not that a person studies and that the Eibishter is doing the lamering, that the Eibishter is repeating it back to him, but that the Yid is repeating. He's studying in a manner of lamer. He's repeating the things that the Eibishter says. Like the pasuk says, "Tan l'shayni imrasecha." Pasuk says, "Tan l'shayni," my tongue will respond imrasecha to your sayings. Shadiburim t'Torah sha'adam omer. So meaning that the words that the person is saying, imrasecha. What is a person saying when he's studying Torah? He's saying the words of Hashem. And how is he saying it? In a way of l'shayni tan. My tongue is repeating it. It's not just that we're studying the Eibishter's wisdom. Imrasecha, Hashem is saying it. And in kind, that we're responding to the Eibishter. Like one who responds to the one who's reading. It's just like in Cheder. The teacher says the pasuk, he reads the words, and he says the taich, and then all the kids repeat back to him. Right? Bereshis bar Elokim, etc. So the same idea is here, that lamer, when a Yid studies Torah, it's as if he's repeating after the Eibishter. The Eibishter is the Malamed in Cheder. He's teaching. He's saying, Meimas Kerner Shema Ba'arvis, and the Yid repeats after him, repeats the words after the Eibishter. So we have two interpretations of the word lamer. One is that the Eibishter repeats what the Yid is saying when he studies Torah. And the other one is that when a Yid is studying Torah, he's repeating what the Eibishter is saying. Those are the two pirushim in the word lamer. But Vayedaber lamer, another interpretation, another meaning of the word lamer is Vayedaber lamer. Vayedaber Elokim is called advarim. Ha'ela aseres hadibris shehem klalos kol Torah hu lamer. That Vayedaber Elokim is called advarim ha'ela. The Eibishter is saying these words, meaning the aseres hadibris, which the aseres hadibris are the encapsulate within them all of the Torah. That's why these 10 are singled out. So he does it in a way of lamer, meaning that these 10 dibres, meaning the force, the power of the words of Torah, should be brought down here, should influence the 10 utterances with which Hashem creates the world. So here, the Rebbe says that there are two pirushim in lamer. Right? Shnei pirushim bezeh, two pirushim. And then he actually, right, but he says v'oid pirush. He says, right, but he says shnei pirushim v'oid pirush. So the third one is not one of the two pirushim. There's two pirushim and a third pirush. So pshat is that the two pirushim the Rebbe is saying is the pirushim of the word lamer. We already have an understanding that the word lamer means to repeat. Right? Like we say, when the Eibishter says to repeat. that it should be repeated. So, in the conventional translation of the word lamer, which means to repeat, which is the way we find it all over Torah, so we have two interpretations. What does repeating mean here? Because it can't be meaning what it means everywhere else, which is repeating to people that weren't there, because everybody was there. So what does repeating mean here? So here's two perushim. It could either mean that the Yid repeats after the Eibishter, or that the Eibishter repeats after the Yid. Those are the two perushim in lamer as we would translate it generally. Another pirush is already here. We're not translating lamer in the same way. Now we're translating lamer in a new way. That what's lamer mean? This is like already a drush. The pasuk says, "Vayedaber Elokim." Hashem spoke. Kol advarim, all these words, these diburim, lamer. So you have two things. You have dibur and you have amira. You have the speaking and you have the saying. What does that mean? So just basically, what do we call the Ten Commandments? They're actually not called Ten Commandments because we have 613 commandments. They're called Aseres HaDibros or Aseres HaDvarim. They're called in the Torah. The 10 things or the 10 speeches or sayings of the Eibishter. When the Eibishter creates the world, how does he create the world? Ba'asara Mamoris. He creates them with 10 Mamoris. You have Amira and you have Dibur. You have saying and you have speaking. However we would want to translate it. Either way, there's Dibur and there's Amira. They're two different inyanim, right? So there's Vayedaber, it's called Advarim. That is a reference to Aseres HaDibros. That's a reference to Torah. And the point is that these Aseres HaDibros, the words of Torah should be lamer, should come into Amira. That they should impact and affect the Asar Mamaris. It should affect the world. It should be brought into the world in an impactful, meaningful way. Let's see how he finishes off the paragraph here. So, it's the same as with regard to the study of the Torah of a Yid, that that he does it in a way of Vayedaber, that words of Torah are lamer, impacting the utterances with which the world are created. From his words of Torah, Nasa Amira, what happens is that we get Amira, the saying, which meaning Hamshachas Hashpa Lamata, that this should influence down here at Lamata in this world. It should influence the world. It should impact the world. That the words of Torah shouldn't remain in heaven. They shouldn't remain abstract, but they should be impactful in the physical world. Connection between all these things with lamer. So again, we have three interpretations of lamer. One is that lamer means that a Yid studies Torah and the Eibishter repeats. And all this, by the way, this is all the Chiddush of Matan Torah. What was achieved at Mount Sinai? What was that wasn't there before? Because Yidden were studying lamer. That now, after Hashem gives us the Torah at Har Sinai, now a Yid studies Torah, and that causes that the Eibishter should study Torah. Should lamer it, he should repeat it. Or that a Yid repeats what the Eibishter is saying, that when a Yid studies Torah now, he's not just studying on his own, but he's repeating the Eibishter's words. And finally, that when a Yid studies Torah, the Torah has an impact on the world. It doesn't remain apart from the world, but it impacts the world. That Vayedaber becomes lamer. So and all these things are three interpretations of the same word lamer. So we know the Rebbe would say this often, that the concept that if you find more than one interpretation of one word, so they're all then they have to be connected. If you have different commentaries on words, it's not different ways of looking at it, and the two have no connection. But if they're on the same word, the word itself connects them, and so there has to be a shaykh, there has to be a connection between them. The Rebbe would often cite, he says that shatnez, on a biblical level, the prohibition of shatnez is only when wool and linen are mixed together, when they're combed together, they're spun together, and they're woven together. But if you take, let's say, a linen thread that was spun and woven, and the Eibishter, you should have. There's no klum shalom bercha. There's no. You don't greet anybody. You don't say hello when you come in. Is that not what you do? Moshe knew what the Eibishter was referring to. He said, "You should have benched me. You should have given me a bracha." So later, when the Yidden are in trouble, and Moshe is davening, so he says, "Va'ata yigdal na koyach adnai." Now you should enhance the koyach of Adnai, which is like a bracha to the Eibishter, like sort of empowering the Eibishter it's a bracha to the Eibishter. But he finishes, the pasuk finishes, Kasher dibarta lamer. Like you said, lamer. So over there too, what's lamer mean? Kasher dibarta lamer. First of all, where did the Eibishter say? And second of all, what's lamer? Who's repeating it to? So Maharsha explains, what does it mean? That you told me to tell you. So the Yid says, so here you see the concept of lamer, that lamer is to tell to the Eibishter, and then the Eibishter repeats, right? So he says like this. So that's about that pasuk. the kasher dibarta lemer al derech Vayedaber lemer. So mistaber shekenu gam apirish lemer. So just as we find that there's a link elsewhere in Chassidus that talks about the link between kasher dibarta lemer with Vayedaber Elokim lemer. So therefore, it would follow that the same would be true about the word lemer. That the word lemer, just like over there, the Eibusher tells Moshe to tell him something. To tell him something that the Eibusher is the one, that Moshe is the one that should say it. So to hear lemer is that the Yid should say it to the Eibusher in a manner that the Eibusher then repeats it. Okay. Note 13. We said that the second interpretation of lemer is that the Yid is repeating what the Eibusher is saying, that the Eibusher is one saying and the Yid is repeating. So this is note 13. Torah Sham. He says like this: "V'lahoyer shegam lepirush zeh she'adam chayzer advarim shakadosh baruch hu omer move on zeh shakadosh baruch hu omer advarim achshav nasis al yidei limud adam." It would seem when we look at the two interpretations of lemer, what's the cause and what's the effect? Who's causing what? So according to the first pirush, the Yid is saying to the Eibusher, which is causing the Eibusher to repeat. According to the second, it's the Eibusher that initiates and says that causes the Yid to repeat. So they seem to be in contradiction, right? Who's the one that's saying first? So the Rebbe says no, that's not the case over here. Even according to the second interpretation that the Yid is repeating after the Eibusher, but who's causing that the Eibusher should say it in the first place? That's the Yid. In other words, the second interpretation of lemer is not contradicting the first, that the Yid is learning Torah, and that causes the Eibusher to learn Torah. The question here, though, is, he says like this, the Rebbe says, Ava pirush de lemer hu loisha adam po'ilamayla ala adrab, shedibra adam hu kein achar Torah. The argument here is not whether the Yid is studying Torah and causing the Eibusher to study Torah. That idea is also true. The question is, what is the meaning of lemer? When we say lemer, which part of this process are we referring to? The Yid initiating, causing the Eibusher to repeat, or the Eibusher, and that the Yid is repeating what the Eibusher says? Who's the one that's doing the repeating, right? That's the only difference in how we're interpreting it. So the Rebbe is saying, already off the bat, because later we ask the question, what's the connection between all of them? So if there's a connection, then it would follow that they can't be in contradiction, obviously. That would be a whole other issue to untangle. So here the Rebbe is saying that it's not a contradiction. According to the second interpretation, that lemer means that the Yid is responding to the Eibusher, we're not arguing on the fact that the Yid studies that the Yid studies in the Eibusher that kol ha'kleir v'sheina HaKadosh Baruch Hu kleir v'sheina kenegdai, that when a Yid studies, the Eibusher sits and studies opposite him. We're just discussing the word lemer. What does lemer mean? Okay, so that's where we have these two pirushim. Okay, chapter 2. Are we doing on time? We're okay. Plenty. Good. Chapter 2. V'hinei. When there's stirring around me, I just to wonder where we're. Right. Okay. So v'hinei. So there's a maimer from the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash said on Shavuos, 100 years prior to this maimer. The Rebbe said this maimer in Tafshin Chaf Tes, 1969. There's a maimer that the Rebbe Marash said in 1869, exactly 100 years before the Rebbe said this maimer on Shavuos. It says over there that after he asked the question that lemer, as we asked here, that lemer seems to be extra, so maybe Mashakasav Yalkut he brings what the Yalkut Shemaini says. When the Eibusher spoke, that the Yalkut Shemaini says that when by Mount Torah, Mount Sinai, when the Eibusher spoke to the Yidden, everybody said that Hashem spoke to me alone, spoke directly to me, personally to me. Imi adibur medaber, the Eibusher, the words were speaking directly to me. Shnemar, like the pasuk says, Anoichi avai lekecha lashon yachid. So the Medrash notes, the Yalkut Shemaini notes, that the pasuk says, Anoichi Hashem Elekecha, I am God, your God, and Elekecha is singular, not Elekeichem. He doesn't say Elekeichem. You're talking to a bunch of people, you say Elekeichem, yours in the plural. But the pasuk, even though it's talking to everybody, says Elekecha, you're in the singular, and everybody came away saying, he said Elekecha, he was talking to me alone. So Mavair, and the Rebbe Marash explains. So he quotes the Yalkut Shemaini Mavair, and he explains the Zohar Madis Medrash. This is what you find in another Medrash Rabbah that says on the pasuk of I am Hashem, your God, in the singular. Another reason, another meaning, and what it means that the Eibusher says Anoichi Avai Elekecha, I am your God, in the singular. That the Eibusher spoke to each person on their level. Meaning as much as they could take. We know that Kol Dibur Parcha Nishmasan, right? The Eden expired from it. It was so intense. But the intensity that a person can handle varies from person to person. So it wasn't just a one-size-fits-all. It was so overwhelming that it overwhelmed everybody beyond. But each one was overwhelmed in their own specific way. In other words, he spoke to each one on their level. The young to their capacity, and the elders to their capacity, the youngsters to their ability.
He said the same thing when it came out. Sound.
To each one on their level.
No, but he said one would like say hello and they translate hello. I mean, how does that work?
What do you mean? Well, the whole concept of Aseres Dibros happened in a way that we can't fathom. Like Rashi says, it's something that you can't even articulate exactly what it went, because everything was coming together. Everything was happening. But the point is that everybody on their level. So these are two midrashim that he brings. One from the Alkut Shemaini that every person said the Eibusher spoke to me personally, and seemingly like a supporting idea from the other medrash, the Medrash Rabbah, that everybody got there on their level. So meaning it was sort of tailored to every specific individual, right? So the Rebbe says like this: Shleimar, you can say, why does Reb Marash feel the need to bring in his mimer to bring the second medrash? He's bringing the Alkut Shemaini, that should be enough. Why does he bring the second medrash? Seemingly, it's just like sort of a similarity in that way in the Alkut Shemaini. Bless you. But from the Medrash Rabbah, from the Medrash where it says that everybody was Lefi Koichan, everybody according to their level. So here already, you can't say that we're talking about that they experienced it on a soul level. It has to be also on a physical level. Why? Because Neshama doesn't get old. I mean, we say an old soul, right? But they don't age. They're not older. They're not younger. The body is where you have older and younger and stronger. So therefore, when the Medrash says that everybody Lefi Koichan, so what Reb Marash is trying to explain, that this idea that Imi Adibur Medaber, everybody said that the Eibusher spoke directly to me, is an experience that wasn't just felt by the neshama but also by the body, and that's why he brings the second medrash. Okay. Why is it? Why was it necessary for the Eibusher, for everybody to feel that the Eibusher spoke to them individually? In other words, all of Torah it says Ani Hashem Elokim, we say in Shema, right? Ani Hashem Elokeichem. The Eibusher talks to us as a group, collectively. Why is it necessary that by Aseres Dibros have to be Anoich Havai Lekechos in singular? What's the benefit of everybody feeling that the Eibusher spoke specifically to him? What does that accomplish? He says like this. So the Rebbe Marash explains in his Maimer, Atam al Zesh Adibur, the Aseres Dibros Soiba the Imi Adibur Medaber, explains what's the reason that the Aseres Dibros were spoken in a way that everybody felt that the Eibusher is speaking specifically to him, in singular to every single individual. Even though all of Torah says Dibros applies to everybody, so he could have just as easily spoken to the group as a group. Similarly, I mean, everywhere in Torah, the Rebbe generally speaks to us as a group in the plural. So why here was it necessary? So he says, this is based. So he explains why is it that the Aseres Dibros had to be in the singular to every single individual. What's the advantage? What was achieved? What was accomplished by speaking in that manner? So he says, based on what the Yalkut says, also there he continues and says like this: the Bashas Matan Torah, at the time of Mount Sinai, of the giving of the Torah, Shitaf HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shmoi B'Kol Echad V'Echad Miyisrael. The Eibusher invested his name, attached his name to every single individual, to every single Jew. As it says, that Zeh Mashakosov Rechav Elokim Riboisayim Ad Naibam Sina B'Kodesh. The pasuk in Tilim, where the capital of Tilim, Samaches, talks about, among other things, it talks about the events of Matan Torah, and over there it says Rechav Elokim Riboisayim. The chariot of the Eibusher is 2 times 2,000. Alfei Shinon, the thousands of angels. Ad Naivam, God is in them. Sinai B'Kodesh is Sinai with holiness. What does that mean? So the Alkut explains. The Alkut Shemaini interprets this pasuk to mean like this: the Kemoisha Adnai Bam B'Malachim, just as Adnai Bam. When we say that God's name Adnai, which is God's name, is Bam in them in the Malachim, the one that we're talking about, the Rechav Elokim Riboisayim Alfei Shinon, that's referring to the Malachim. So the Eibusher's name is Bam is in them. And what does it mean that the Eibusher's name is in them? That Shebishmoi shall call Malach Meshutef B'Seifei Shmoi shall Kadosh Baruch Hu, that every angel's name includes within it the name of Hashem, which is the name Kael. One of Hashem's names is Kael. For example, Michael, Gavriel, and Raphael. Right? Those are names of 3 angels. Each one of their names ends with Kael. So we see that the Eibusher's name is invested, is attached to the names of the angels, to the Malachim. So came by Matan Torah. The same is true by Matan Torah, that Sinai B'Kodesh, when the Eibusher was the holy experience at Sinai, is at that moment is Shitef HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shmoi B'Kol Echad V'Echad Miyisrael. So just as Adnai Vam, just as the Eibusher's name is in the Malachim, so the same is true that at Sinai B'Kodesh the Eibusher put his name, just as he did to the Malachim, put it in every single Jew. And how do we see that? Because it says Anochi Havai Lekecha. He spoke specifically to every single individual, and speaking to every individual, that alludes to the idea that the Eibishter was miyachid shmoy on every single person. He put his name into every single individual. So just as individual angels, not just the angels in general, but each individual angel has the name of Hashem invested in them, same is true every single yid has the name of the Eibishter in them. And he continues the Maimer, that through what's the point? This is a sort of an abstract concept. The Eibish's name is in the Malachim, and the Eibish's name is now in the Yid. What does it mean that the Eibish's name is in a Malach? So he explains in the Maimer that we know that the name of something expresses its life force, right? Your name is an expression of your neshama, your chayis, your life. It's expressed in it. We know that what was the great wisdom of Adam Rishon? That he was able to name everything. What was the great wisdom? You just start giving random names to random things. What was the chachma there? Because Adam Rishon was able to look at a thing and recognize its shayrish mind, recognize its energy, and therefore attach the right name to it. The name that conveys its energy force that comes from above. That was the great wisdom of Adam. So we see that the name is something that conveys the essence of something. So when you say that the Eibish's name is in the Malach, what does that mean? That what's the essence of the Malach? What's his life force? The one that's revealed, just as your name reveals you, the Eibishter. And since we see a Malach, so this alludes to the fact that a Malach is totally bottled to the Eibishter. A Malach is totally nullified to the Eibishter. That's why a Malach can be called B'Shem Hashem. So that's why you have Psukim, the Rashi brings in his Maimer, where it talks about Malachim and refers to them as God. And we're talking about a Malach. Why? Because the Malach, his whole existence, doesn't feel his separate existence. His whole existence is the Eibishter, the life force that's Machayim. And so that's the meaning. So when we say that the Eibishter puts his name in the Malachim, what does that mean? That there's a bittul in the Malachim. It means that the Malach is totally submitted, surrendered to the Eibishter, that what does he feel? He feels that life force of the Eibishter. And same is true with Eden. So let's just finish this paragraph and we'll stop. So that through the Eibishter's name being attached to the angels, so now they become nullified to the name of the Eibishter that's in their name. Same is true with regard to the Yidden. So through the Eibishter investing his name in every single Yid, that affects a bittul that the Yid becomes submitted, surrendered to the Eibishter. As he explains the length of the Maimer, we'll continue to explore that in the next class.